All right, my name is Sean Fallon, and you're listening to episode 10, Rocky. Welcome to From First to Last. Hello again, and welcome again. My name is Sean Fallon. This is From First to Last, and this is episode 10, the first movie special. Without further ado, let me introduce my guest. He's a writer, he's a returning guest, he's going to eat lightning, and he's going to crap thunder. He's Jack, the fighting Brighton Godwin. Hello, Jack, how are you?
Oh, I'm so pleased with that intro. Hello. Yeah, best one yet.
There you go. Well, I was just like, sure he was from Brighton, or he's in Brighton, or something about Brighton.
Yeah,
It'll do, it rhymes.
works. I,
Yeah, that's it.
I also would have gone with Apollo's Master of Disaster as well.
That is a good one. So what movie have you chosen for the first movie special?
I've chosen Rocky, the Rocky series.
Fantastic. Okay, so what's your experience with the Rocky films?
I don't know if this is a common story to have with Rocky for people like my age, who weren't alive when the first few are out. But I was put off them really at a young age. I knew that the first one was, regarded as a sort of classic. But even when people recommended it to me, I'd kind of roll my eyes a bit because I'm like, really, Rocky? The thing I've seen parodied like countless times. I didn't associate Stallone with any kind of, with a masterpiece or anything. But
Yeah.
I can't remember what happened that spurred me onto it. A year or two back, I think I read something from a critic online I liked or something who, just showed their love for the series, and I thought I'd give the first one a shot. And I loved it so much, I immediately went out and bought like the whole series, which was
Yeah.
up to Barbera at that point, and dived into it and absolutely loved the series all the way through.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think that is a common story because I was the same. Like as far as I knew of Rocky, it was just like these very cheesy, bombastic movies. There was like the Rocky cliche of the underdog and all that. And what happened to me was when I used to live in Istanbul and we'd get driven to work in this like big minibus and it was like a 35-40 minute drive. So I didn't want to talk to anyone on the bus, so I ended up putting all the Rocky films on my iPad and just watched them one after another during the like in half an hour bursts there and back. Because I just wanted like a big series, and it was like a big blind spot that I wanted to just cut off straight away. And so I watched them all one after another. And I mean, they're a fascinating experience to watch them, to see like how like Rocky One is like quintessentially 70s, very slow, not much happens, and then to see like how it develops into like where it goes to with like number four and number five. It is a fascinating series. So so for Rocky, you love it, Rocky?
Rocky, the more times I see it, the more I love it. It might,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always hard to, define what your favorite movie is, because, movies so diverse in your favorites list, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's definitely like, top three and battling for the top spot there, because I absolutely adore it.
Okay, so why does it hold such a big place in your heart?
Well, I think there's so many things about the movie I love, but I mean, it really does come down to the fact that Rocky, and this only came to me the other day, but Rocky Balboa himself is probably my favorite cinematic character.
That's very interesting, actually. You say that because when Creed came out, I saw that a lot of people said that was like a big thing, like on audiences everywhere and stuff like that. Of people saying like the Rocky films are great, but Rocky himself is legendary, like that character.
Yeah, I mean, there's the basic thing of always being able, loving to root for the underdog, which is maybe not, something that the Rocky movie started, but it definitely like sort of perfected that whole journey. But as well as that, it's kind of refreshing as a hero to be. I mean, he's deep and he's conflicted, and he's got these nuances to him but at the same time, he is just a straightforward, good, generous person,
Yeah.
which we don't get too much of because, like, especially I remember I was reading a quote about that Stallone had said. I think it was actually when Rocky had been the year that Rocky was released. He was on some chat show, and he was saying about how the '70s there was this big sort of countercultural thing for there to be more anti-heroes. And you think about, well, even like the same year, you've got a Taxi Driver. You've got those kind of films, which are amazing and were like new at the time. But I think now, going back to it, it is really great just to have a character that is pure and good. It doesn't have to have these, dark undertones to him, even if he does have, a bit of darkness to him that he's fighting against.
Yeah, because I mean, rewatching Rocky, it was interesting to see like, because he's quite a passive character in his own way, and the thing that makes so like looking at Rocky, like he's quite a passive character. He's a big lovable oaf and all that. So when it builds and builds and builds, and he has that big flip out at Mickey, and he's like, "When was my shot?" and "This place stinks," and that whole thing. It's really affecting because you can see that like it's just been building and building and building and building inside him, and then it makes you reassess everything you've seen before, where he is like this sort of just like lovable goof, but it's like but he is living this like he's trapped in this shit life and just like can't get out, and no one's gonna help him, and he's just trying to be a good guy and get through it, and then he just all explodes in one big thing, which I thought, because Stallone's never been the best actor, but he puts a lot of himself into Rocky. I think that's where he puts all his work.
It's effectively, it's so close to him, it mirrors, the whole series mirrors his story, but like the background of the first Rocky movie like really is an underdog story itself. Like he always mentions that. I've seen him mention in interviews multiple times saying at the time he had $103 in the bank. And his wife was pregnant, and his car had broken down, so he was taking a bus to work. He was getting typecast as like a thug in all these roles, and he had to sell his dog, who was his dog in the film, who I think he bought back during production or something. But he had all that, and as part of I think at this point he was offered more money if they were to get in a big star. I think they wanted like Burt Reynolds or Robert Redford or someone big at the time to come in and elevate the picture, but he was like, no, I'm the star, this is my story, and risked everything to make a name for himself, which is kind of the story of Rocky himself. Like, no one expects anything of Rocky Balboa in the same way no one expected anything of Sylvester Stallone in 1976.
When you watch them all, you can see they are the progression of Stallone's career as well, and sort of like a progression of his ego, sort of, because the first film is very much like you say, it's an actor who just is happy to be in a film, so winning at the end doesn't matter. He gets the girl, he's done the job, it's fine, he's gone the distance. But then as the movies go on, he needs to win bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you get to like Rocky 5 where he needs to like beat a young up and comer, which I feel is like, I don't know if that's like Stallone saying that he's still in the game and all these young action heroes, he'd still be able to batter them and so on. And then you see that sort of ego crest, and then it comes back down to where you get Rocky Balboa, and he's very much back, just happy to be doing the character again. I think they are great in that sense of, like you say, how much Stallone put himself into it, like how much he is that character. Oh, also, actually, there was one thing I did for Audience Everywhere, and I said that Rocky was the history of America.
I remember that article, yeah, that was great.
So, like, 1976, when you're saying, like, there's loads of anti-heroes, because when Rocky won Best Picture, it was against was it Network, All the President's Men, Taxi Driver, all very dark post-Nixon movies, and it won because like everyone was like, no, we're sick of being miserable, we need a win again, and Rocky was sort of proving that America could go the distance. And then gradually, like you say, Stallone's ego crests, as does America's.
Yeah, exactly. I think the more, I mean, it's a very patriotic series, obviously, with the American flag shorts. But there's like the more outwardly more obviously he connects Rocky's story with that of America's, the less it works for me.
Yes.
For instance, like in four, not definitely my least favorite, which I don't think is very popular opinion, but
Hmm.
like yeah, that one when it is America versus Russia, and he is showing the world that America is still a superpower in that movie. That doesn't work for
Yeah.
me. Whereas like you can like apply, you can apply America to all these films, but I think it's done in a slightly more subtle way than
Hmm.
being draped in an American flag at the end of the movie.
Yeah, you do have to sort of reach for the connections and stuff like that. Whereas, yeah, I think four is sort of half a good film. I think my least is five. I couldn't find anything redeemable about five. I just couldn't get into that one at all.
I actually quite like Five. I rewatched it like a week or two back, and I was like, before I was kind of like, oh, it's not as bad as people say, but now I kind of like, maybe it's something I should keep to myself because people get quite angry about that movie. But like I actually quite like it. It is actually like it's definitely not the worst in the series for me. I do get a lot out
Hmm.
of it, even though there is some absurd stuff in there, and I'm not a fan of.
Yeah.
I don't think MC Hammer songs should really be in a Rocky movie.
No, that's it. It's very of it. It's 1990, I think. I think it is very. It's like the first Rocky in the 90s, and it
Yeah,
is very much. I mean, it does. Rocky Five plays an important part in the whole thing, though, because if you don't get Rocky Five and the series finishes with four, then I don't think you ever get Rocky Balboa. And if you don't get Rocky Balboa, then you don't get Creed. I think you need five being unsatisfying, so Stallone needs to make a new one. And when he makes Balboa, and Balboa is really good, and sort of repositions the character as an old man who runs a restaurant, and then that leads straight into Creed, which is good. But that's a redeeming thing, I guess, for five, that its existence led to better films, which is good.
yeah, exactly. I think I mean, I do have problems with Five, and I think Balboa like redeems a lot of them because, and yeah, it's like I don't like Four, but Four had to exist for Creed to happen the way it did, and I'm so happy about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. It is interesting, like again, talking like from first to last about and starting with Rocky. Yeah, I think there is that thing of like if you went on the street now and found people who hadn't seen the Rocky movies and said, describe Rocky to me, I feel as though four is the movie everyone sort of goes to. I think four's the one that's got itself into our consciousness of what a Rocky film is. Tons of montages, very cheesy, big and brash and like bombastic. And I think me and you both had the same experience. When you actually sit down and watch Rocky, 1976 Rocky, it's incredible how restrained it is and how little of the eventual sort of Rocky DNA is in there. A lot of it's there, but like when I was watching it, I was like, this isn't the movie where they chase the chicken. Okay, this isn't the movie where Paulie's in his corner. Okay,
Yeah,
and I there was loads of stuff like, okay, so because I looked as well, the Rocky theme, like the actual like bum bum, 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 doesn't start till an hour and a half into the film. That's the first time you get it. It's everything up to that point is character, scene setting, a lot of quiet moments. They spend a good 10 minutes with him and Adrian on the ice rink, just fleshing that whole thing out. No rush to it, just like sort of 70s pacing, just, yep, go at your own time, we'll wait.
yeah. I mean, if I was to describe, I've done this before when people have rolled their eyes at me when I say I love Rocky. It's one of my favorite movies, and and they've just never even seen it or seen anything from it, but they're like, really, Rocky? I would say like, oh, it's an indie romance, and then people go, what? Like, I thought it was this big bombastic sports movie, like you say, but I mean, because in the first one, I think you got like the one fight at the start that's like 5 minutes
Yep.
long, then you've got the whole movie. Then you've got like 15. You got like a 5 minute montage, and then like 15 minutes of the fight at the end. Everything in between is about the characters and how they interact, and about Rocky as a man.
Yeah, I mean, I've always described it as being like, I mean, I think later films become boxing movies, but Rocky is just a movie that has boxing in it. It just happens to have boxing. It's like Friday, the TV show Friday Night Lights was a show that just happened to have football. You know, it's one leading the other. You know, it's
That's
not.
funny you say that because I've been put off seeing Friday Night Lights because I'm not interested in that sport. So and I've had people, I've rolled my eyes at that, and then people have said, no, seriously, check this out.
Yeah, I actually had never watched it, and I watched it for episode 8 of this podcast, which will be out in weeks and weeks and weeks. And I just watched like obviously the first and the last episode, and it's very affecting. It does get you into it. It's very good, but that's for another day. But yeah, so yeah, like it's interesting because he obviously has the fight with Spider Rico at the start, and then yeah, I think it's not. He doesn't have another boxing match then for another, I would say, a good hour and 40 minutes of the movie. Like the length of Rocky Balboa, the actual movie, occurs before he fights Apollo Creed, and not like you say, not. There's like one montage, and a lot of it is just him doing things, just sort of being there. You know, just there's a lot of scenes of him walking from place to place and just like painting this picture of just like working class Philly life.
Yeah, there's I mean, all this there's a lot of stuff where, I mean, on surface nothing much is happening, but there's nothing I would take away from any of that because. You know, I mean, all the stuff of him on his own, just walking along, him talking to little Marie, you know, telling him not to hang out with those coconuts anymore. Like, there's, you know, it's all painting this picture of like, you know, someone who's completely lost and is aimless and lonely, and he is not. He kind of proves himself throughout the film. You know, he builds to this fight, of course, but like again, like. Because they actually, I remember the first time I watched it, I wasn't, because I somehow missed the ending. That wasn't something that was spoiled for me. But like you know, when they announced that Apollo has won by split decision, I didn't notice. I was like, wait, who won? You know, I had to put it back or look at the wiki or something because it was like they fade out that sound and bring Adrian and Rocky to the forefront because it doesn't matter who won. He went the distance. It doesn't matter at all as long as he's validated by his love for Adrian.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it, and I think that's the thing that people it sort of gets lost because obviously Rocky 2 is pretty much a remake of Rocky 1, but he wins. You know, it's very much the sort of like it's almost like, oh, let's correct the mistake of the first one because he didn't win. Like, no, it doesn't matter. Like you say, if the movie hadn't shown who won, it doesn't matter because he even says that he just needs to go, you know, the 15 rounds and just stand up and make his mark on the world, and that's it. And it's great. I mean, it's a great sort of thing as well. Like that's very anti the usual. Like usually those sort of movies, it's building up to the main character winning, but just you know, this is just. Him proving that he's an actual person, that he's there, which is great. Yeah, so him losing the fight and it not mattering, it almost seems quite anti-Hollywood now. You know, I don't know if you like.
Yeah, I'm good.
You don't see many films where you get that. I mean, the only one I can think of is. Do you ever see the movie Coach Carter with Samuel L. Jackson?
No, I haven't.
You know, spoilers. In the end, they lose the big game. And it actually, to be honest, it was quite. You watch it and they lose the big game, and it didn't feel earned. I was just like, nah, this was building to a win. This is just. I just feel disappointed now. I don't feel like I've learnt the lesson that trying hard is its own reward. But with Rocky, you're just sort of like, oh, good on you, Rock. Good work, mate.
Well, it's because you spend so much time with him as a character that you know. You get used to what he wants and what he needs. So. You get that feeling of success at the end, regardless of like the actual success of the fight. And
you get like a few little cathartic moments through the film as well. Of like, I love the fact that Adrian shouts at Paulie. You know, Paulie's such a shit character in this film. You just need her to stand up to him because obviously Rocky could have just taken him outside and kicked 7 kinds of shite out of him. But I think it's more satisfying to have her say to him like, you know, just scream in his face. I cook, I clean, what about me? You know, just really get into him. Like good, finally someone puts Paulie in his place. That's good.
I absolutely love Paulie, but he's like, one of the things I appreciate the most about his character is the fact that Stallone he keeps him as a piece of shit in all the
Yeah.
movies. Like each one like is a bit different. Some of them he's a bit more comedic relief. In Rocky 3, he's like a bit racist,
Yeah.
and then he gets a bit repentant in Balboa. But like he is. But I think in the first Rocky he is absolutely the worst. The bit where he throws the turkey in the alley is just horrendous. Apparently,
Yeah.
Talia Shire's like her response to that was real because she didn't know that he was going to do that. So
Okay.
she was kind of in the character and be like, I can't believe he did that.
That's
It's
amazing.
crazy. He is awful, and I think, but he works not just because I find him personally like entertaining all the time, but because
Hmm.
he works as a point for Rocky to work against. You showed Rocky's absolute trust and
Hmm.
generosity and forgiveness through Paulie, because this is a guy who stays friends with Paulie all his life, and he has no reason to. This guy, like, makes his life so difficult for him, and then even loses all
Yep.
his money in Rocky 5.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And even after like Rocky got him a sex robot in Rocky 4,
Oh God.
ridiculous. Yeah, I think the Paulie character is, like you say, that interesting counterpoint to just like, yeah, he works well because he's not like a sort of boo hiss villain. Like you meet people like Paulie in your life, like those sort of unrepentant miserable bastards who are just like, the world owes me a living, and just makes everyone uncomfortable and is just horrible. And then you meet the people who like keep these miserable bastards around because they're saints, and I think that's like the thing with Paulie and Rocky. Like, I think Rocky should have either given him a good kicking or just been like, you know what, Paulie, you're not, you're, I need nothing more from you. Just get away. You are awful, and just binned him like. But because Rocky's a good guy, he keeps him around.
Yeah,
It's true.
I think I do think that if there was to be a saint of like cinema, it is Rocky. He has so much patience for Paulie beyond what
Yeah.
any real human would go to, which is another reason why he's such an inspirational character to look up to.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like yeah, because there's not a bad. Like, I think I was trying to think of the films like of any sort of act of dishonesty or like badness that Rocky does, and yeah, I mean, the only thing he ever feels guilty about is killing Apollo, and even then, you can't really hold him responsible.
Yeah, and there's a question there of whether it was the right thing to do or not, because it was Apollo's decision to keep going.
Yeah,
And if he'd thrown in the towel, would he have been denying Apollo the right to live his life as he wanted to?
yeah,
Which is actually one of my favorite bits about. I love Apollo in 4, even though I don't like the movie. Every scene
oh yeah,
with him in it is just amazing. I love Carl Weathers so much, and he's another reason why
yeah,
this movie works so well, because like he could have been, just uh, a mustache twirling villain, a rich man who doesn't care about Rocky at all and thinks he's going to win, and he is that. But there's such Carl Weathers has so much fun with the role, but also has these little moments where that facade breaks and you see his insecurity, and it's amazing.
yeah. Obviously, it's interesting to talk about Apollo, in the week, because this podcast won't be on the website till like August. But obviously, this week while recording it is obviously the week that Muhammad Ali died.
Yes.
And to kind of like what I watched when we were kings
Oh, I
this week, like
still need to see that.
oh dude, it's incredible, just absolutely phenomenal. And to see the way that like Ali was talking to the press and he talks to the people around him, and then the next day I watched Rocky, you can instantly see Apollo is that character. And yeah, exactly. Weathers is having tons of fun with it, but he's also got a lot of fear. And yeah, I would happily, if these movies were released now and there was like a shared Rocky universe, I would happily watch 7 movies just about Apollo Creed. I would watch his story. Like if they made a movie that ran alongside Rocky that showed Creed's rise to the top and then him fighting Rocky, I'd be all over that.
Oh yeah, I mean, he has like he has like almost the best scenes in the series, and that's why have a lot of appreciation for Rocky 3. I have such a love for that movie because I mean it's the one where you get the most amount of Apollo being Apollo. He's just such a fun character, but Carl Weathers never lets him just be a fun character. He has little moments that just make him work as a human being. Like I love just the look on his face when right at the end of Rocky, when he knocks Rocky down and he's sort of like turning to the crowd, he thinks the fight's over, and Rocky gets up and he just looks over at him. He's just got this look on his face of just like, really, you're getting up again? I've got to keep doing this. And it's a great look for someone who's been like taunting him in the press for the whole movie, and he's just now realizing, wow, this is an opponent.
Yeah, and that's ace when he goes into the corner, and I love Duke as well. I think Duke's a great character, and Duke's like, he doesn't think it's an exhibition, he thinks it's a damn fight, and he has to go out and he's just like, no, go out and knock him down, and he just cannot knock him down. Like you say, just that look on his face of just like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is gonna take some killing, like. And it just keeps going. And then, like you say, Rocky 3 is peak Apollo, kind of having the whole thing of Clubber Lang giving him some abuse, and that's how he's brought in. And then, like, yeah, just cheesy 80s nonsense, but brilliant. Like him having to get back the eye of the tiger and all that stuff. I have a big soft spot for Rocky 3.
Yeah, I think it's not my favorite because that's, of course, Rocky. But it's I think it's the one which I want to watch the most. It's the one that I can watch 1,000 times because it's so enjoyable. It's like eating ice cream.
Yeah, that's it. And it's one thing I was thinking about this week is it is interesting for that movie in terms of Stallone's ego, because there was one thing that always bugged me about that film, and it's like they show Rocky has become like he's like fat and bored, he's just like he's fighting all these chumps and knocking them out, and he's doing like exhibition matches against Hulk Hogan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then or Thunderlips even. And then when he's got to fight Clubber Lang, and he has like this stupid training thing where there's like a massive crowd of people and he's got like a big brass band, and you're like, okay, so he's become arrogant, he's going to go out and Clubber Lang's going to batter him because of that. But on the way to the match, Mickey has a heart attack, so his head's all over the place, and that's why he gets beaten. Like, okay, so he couldn't be beaten for his hubris. They still had to add that extra thing of like, oh, no. He might have still got through on arrogance, but he was thinking about Mickey. And that always just sort of bugged me of like, no, leave the Mickey stuff out for later, and have Rocky actually be beaten because he's forgotten who he was, rather than because he was distracted.
They also play it slightly as a revenge thing, since Mr. T effectively shouts at Mickey until he has a heart attack.
Yes, no, that is true. Yeah, he does have to go in a bit. There does become a bit of an avenging theme, isn't there, for like 3 and 4? Like someone dies and then he has to go and box the person's memory.
Yeah.
Even though Rocky 4 gets to a certain point where they sort of just forget about Apollo. Like, by the end of the fight, you're like, someone needs to say, this is for Apollo Creed, or mention his name. But no, it's just he's wrapped in an American flag, and if you can change, and I can change, and 20 million can change, we can all change, and that's how the film ends. Like, no.
Yeah.
You fought this giant Russian because he killed someone. Remember that.
It ends up becoming about like beating communism, like punching Ivan Drago until the communism just falls out of his head and he decides to fight for himself.
Incredible. I mean, that whole thing where it's like, and I know we're jumping around, but whatever. But like when Ivan Drago is like fighting Rocky, and it's like, he's not a man, he is made of steel, and then he has to go fight him. It's like, oh, what is this movie? And then again, it's the other way. Like Rocky cuts Drago, and then Duke's like, you see, he's not a machine, he's a man. Like we know he's not a machine, mate. We're not doing that.
It becomes like
that would have been a better reveal.
It becomes more of a like mythological thing in that movie, because it's about these titans fighting, and it's just it's a David and Goliath situation, which I think kind of makes it work within the Rocky mythos, but like I don't emotionally connect to that movie at all. Like it's like I think 4 and 5 are the only ones where the fights I don't really have an emotional reaction to them at the end, whereas all the rest of them are incredibly emotional.
Yeah, they are like. I mean, going back to Rocky, that like the sheer amount of time they put into the build up for the last fight. By the time they get into the ring, you're just in it. You know, you're there. You're right on the edge of your seat. You're kind of like I was like shadow boxing in my seat, like you know, getting into it. Like by the time it was finished, I was out of breath. You know, just like yeah. Whereas like 4 is sort of it's too heightened. It's too cartoony. And then 5 is meaningless, like the street fight with like, and that's I think it's Vanilla Ice or MC Hammer, like it's one of their songs playing in the background, and it's got to that point where you're like, oh well, this is just it's like self parody now. It's just lost. It's lost whatever it had.
I have mixed feelings about the fight in 5. I like the idea of it. I don't really like the execution because I like the idea of him like. It's a different thing because he's not like for that movie. The plot of that movie didn't make sense for Rocky to be in the ring again. So I liked that he was on the streets fighting for the streets, and I can buy like the weird judo moves he does and everything. But again, like the direction's a bit weird in it, and the editing and the music is kind of awful, and it kind of detracts from it.
One thing about talking about Apollo and Rocky 4 that I just thought of, which I absolutely love. Obviously, that first fight against Drago with like James Brown and all that. But when and like you say, like same as Rocky with like Carl Weathers just having that great expressive face. When he goes to touch gloves with Drago and he hits Drago's gloves and Drago's gloves don't move and there's just a sound of ringing steel. And it's like Apollo does it and then just sort of looks at Drago and like it and I doesn't believe what's just happened and like just sort of walks confused back into his own corner. And I just thought that was just a great little like comedic moment, but also that thing of like it's that moment where Creed's just worked out exactly what he's got himself in for, and we're just going to go from there. Like, but I think that's just a great ding, and then just utter fear, like
especially after the show he's just put on to like enter the ring with like he comes down on like this. I still don't know what it is. It's like a demon head or something. He rides into the arena and then he's like dressed in the American flag with a huge hound and like dancing around, and James Brown's there. It's just huge and extremely cocky, and then to have that, and then to have him be like, oh wait, this guy's gonna kick the crap out of me is quite an amazing moment.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of like I think that's the bit I like of 4, and the rest of it's a bit up and down. There's a bit in 4 where he's talking to Adrian, because there is a certain point where Stallone's like Rockyisms get out of control. Like there's a point where he's talking to Adrian and he's like, yeah, he might kill me, but if he wants to kill me, he's got to have the heart to stand in front of me, and then maybe I'll kill him, and he's got to have the guts to stand up and say that and it just goes on. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it just gets to that point where it goes like critical Rocky mass, like it's Rocky Mad Libs, and it sort of loses control. Because one thing I did notice from like watching these 3 films, there's a distinct way of writing Rocky dialogue, which I think if people can do it, it works really well. Like he does have that sort of it's like oh shucks type wisdom that doesn't mean anything, but it's presented in a way that becomes very meaningful, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think the Rocky movies at their best make cliched things not feel cliched anymore. They make them feel sincere and honest and real.
Yeah, that's like, because jumping to say Creed, like the point where he sort of has Donnie looking in the mirror and he's like, that's your biggest opponent, and I believe that in boxing, and I believe that in life, and all that. And I was like, and watching it, I was like, yeah, that's a really cool sentiment. And then if you take one step back from it, you are like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? It would have been a very different film if Donnie was like, what? No, explain? What? Who am I fighting? What? No. But it's presented in such a way and in such an atmosphere that you don't mind it. It's like, oh, this is a big, like, meaningless cliche, but it means something in this context. I'll run with it. Like, sometimes, like I say, Rocky 4, Rocky 5, sometimes it goes a little bit to the wayside, and it sounds like someone impersonating Rocky dialogue. But when it's done well, like when you have, like, Rocky 1, where he's talking to Paulie, and Paulie says to him, "Oh, what do you see? What do you see in my sister?" And he kind of says, "Oh, I've got gaps. She's got gaps, gaps, and all that." And there's like those little beautiful moments of, like you say, meaningless sort of stuff that works really well.
Well, a lot of those things wouldn't work if someone with better diction, like Apollo, someone more educated, said them, because then it would feel like you can feel the screenwriter in the scene. Whereas when Rocky is saying it, that's how Rocky talks and that's how Rocky thinks. So you know that he's expressing it in the only way he can, which is through things that are fairly cliched, but it works because it's that character talking.
It's such, like you say, it's because it's Stallone, and because obviously definitely Rocky, he's very nervous. Stallone as an actor doesn't speak very clearly, but it works so well. Like if you think of like the actors, like you say, like Burt Reynolds or Robert Redford, who they wanted for it, it'd have been too grand and too showy. I think it would have been too. Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't have worked because it would have then you would have been able to see it and been like, well, no, what you're saying is meaningless and it doesn't, or they would have come in and said, oh no, this dialogue doesn't sound right, and then there would have been punch-ups and stuff like punching up the dialogue, and then it just wouldn't have worked. But like you say, it almost feels as though the original Rocky, it's like they've taken this boxer off the streets and just put him in a film. Like they've taken this actual character and just dumped him in a film and filmed him.
Yeah. Stallone has like a very particular acting ability that works with Rocky because he kind of he looks kind of like, I don't know, he could, in the first Rocky, he looks like he could be a bouncer or like someone shaking down people for money. He looks like a bit of a thug. He doesn't look like a sophisticated guy, but he has this sweetness in him and this jokiness to him that's really endearing. And however much I love Robert Redford, I can't imagine him playing this down on his luck, like dumb thuggish guy, because Robert Redford is a guy who is beautiful and wears amazing suits. So I want to see him in a different role than that.
Yeah, there's a great story about Robert Redford with The Graduate. Like Mike Leigh approached him and said and asked, like he was the original choice for Benjamin.
Oh really?
And he said to Robert Redford, Robert Redford said, okay, so what do I need to act for this part? And is it Mike Leigh? Yeah, the director of The Graduate, and he said, you just got to act like, okay, remember the last time a girl turned you down? And Robert Redford said, what do you mean? So it's like, oh, this isn't going to work. So, and that's when Dustin Hoffman comes in, like, because Robert Redford, like, well, I don't understand. I don't understand what you're talking about. This is a foreign language to me. So the idea of him, like Robert Redford going for Adrian as well wouldn't have made any sense. Like, I think Talia Shire is amazing and she's beautiful and wonderful. That Rocky and Adrian as these sort of like passive, just sort of real people who just connect and just find each other, it works because they're both such shy people. Even though Rocky is very ballsy and very brash, he is quite uncomfortable in his own skin, whereas like a more accomplished actor would just seem too charming, too cool. Okay, so let's jump to the last, and there is a bit of a debate that I started of which is the final Rocky movie. Is it Rocky Balboa or is it Creed? Now, everyone I sort of asked on Twitter said Creed. What do you think?
I think,
like, what is the last Rocky movie?
I almost don't know what to say. I want to say Creed just because I love Creed so much and it continues his story in a way that makes sense. But Rocky, at the end of Rocky Balboa, that's a complete story. That is absolutely the end of this story as far as it needed to be told. And Creed somehow made it work again. But I could have another Creed movie with Rocky in it and call that the last Rocky movie. Just keep on bringing him back until Stallone can't stand up anymore. I'm fine.
Yeah, that's true. I originally, up until last night, because I rewatched Creed last night, and up until last night I said Rocky Balboa. Like, the way I viewed it was Rocky in Creed was like Iron Man in Captain America Civil War. It's the same character, but his story sort of has his films. But then as I watched the film, I realised, like, the one thing that you never get sort of catharsis for or never get a complete catharsis for from the original films, is Rocky killing Apollo. Like, yeah, he beats Drago, but he never gets to sort of make it up to Apollo that he killed him. And then the thing in Creed where, training Donnie and making it work and becoming like family to Donnie and sort of doing what Creed would have done if he was still alive, that again creates, like you say, another ending to the story. So like,
Yeah,
okay, so you can stop at Balboa or you can stop at Creed.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's even mention of Apollo in Five or Balboa.
Nah.
I remember that. I think there's a background gag where in Paulie's room in Rocky Balboa, there's a picture of Rocky fighting Apollo, and Paulie has like taped a picture of his own face over Rocky, so he's punching Apollo, and I think that that's like the only mention of him.
Yeah, he's just sort of like, I think he's just mentioned. I think Rocky's telling a story in the restaurant, and he mentions
Oh
Apollo.
yeah,
But there's never a sense of like, oh, however many years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I was responsible for another man's death, and that weighs heavy on my conscience. That never sort of comes back into it. And like you say, by five, he's completely forgotten,
yeah.
and it never comes up again.
Yeah, exactly. But in Creed, it's actually one of the central thing. It's the driving force for Rocky in a lot of ways as to why he doesn't want to train him at first, and when he does, it's because he recognizes Apollo in Adonis, and
Yeah.
again sees that thing of that whole thing that runs through Creed, which links it back to the first one of that. Not just that someone has a fighting spirit, they're always going to be a fighter, but if someone has like some vocation that they absolutely love, it's the thing they're going to do. Because you have Bianca in Creed, who
love that character.
oh, she's great. I basically want Creed 2 so I can have way more of her. But she has the thing where she has that hearing loss, and she says, I want to keep doing what I love until I can't anymore. And you think, oh, okay, that's exactly what Rocky is doing in this movie, and that's exactly what Adonis is doing. It's the thing he wants to do. It's the thing that he feels completes him. I think Rocky sees that, and he's like, this is going to happen with or without me, so I'm going to try and atone a bit by helping this guy out.
That's it, yeah. And there is that interesting thing of like Rocky Balboa is more, I think, of a remake of Rocky than Creed is. I think Creed is more the sort of like Force Awakens style remix. You take some familiar elements, but you shift it in a way that makes it a new thing that is beholden to the old thing, but it doesn't feel like a retread or a rehash. Whereas like Rocky Balboa is very much huge amounts of callbacks to Rocky 1, and it's great. Like, if you watch Rocky and you watch Rocky Balboa, one, very close to each other, they're very cool bookends to see the character sort of come full circle. But it works. Like, even though it's like, okay, this is pretty much a retread of what we've seen before, it's nice. Like, street level Rocky is the best Rocky. Like, once he's got tons of money, I lose interest in the character. But when he's sort of like just humble, mumbly street level Rocky, yeah, that's good Rocky.
It comes back down to that speech Rocky makes in Balboa, where he says, it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep going. And that's kind of, because you think about in Balboa, it starts suddenly Adrian's dead, and he's working through his grief there, and then here it's like his last in Creed, his last friend Paulie is gone, and as far as we can tell, he doesn't really see anyone else. He doesn't go to that to Mickey's gym anymore, so he's just completely alone again. He even gets that all the scenes in the first Rocky of him walking around being lonely in Philadelphia is him bouncing that ball, and he gets that ball back in Creed, so you can tell he's lonely again. It's the bouncing ball of loneliness.
That's it.
But I can't lost where I was going with that. But I mean, in Creed he's
he's back where he started. He's back being a loner, and he's back being aimless.
Yeah, and and part of his thing there is he needs to rediscover that thing. He needs to rediscover the need to fight, because when he after all he's gone through, after all he's lost, he's told he has cancer and he's going to go through chemotherapy just like Adrian. And he says,
Yeah.
I don't even want this fight. I can't handle it. And I think when he says to Adonis, like he says, it's a hard process and you have a small chance of even getting through it. And I was just thinking, yeah, that reminds me of how they talked about the Apollo fight in the first movie. So I think like you have to go through all this hardship and then you might not even win. And then in this movie, Rocky has to then rediscover that, oh wait, I've got to keep fighting because this is worth it for the people that I'm affecting around me. Because he makes new families in Balboa and Creed because Rocky's kind of defined by the people he helps.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Like, I think they do really well with Balboa in the sense of like Adrian's absence is all over the character's face. Like he's just empty, and you can just see it. Like there's just nothing there. Like he's just going through the motions, and he's trapped in the past. And I think that was a great. Like I was looking at the making of the film, and originally like Talia Shire was going to be in the film, and then her and Stallone apparently sat down together and discussed it, and she just said to him, "It works better if Adrian's not in it. I think you need him to be back at the start, him and Paulie, no one else, and just go from there." And it worked, like you say, it works so well because you've got a lot of hoops to jump through with Rocky Balboa to get him from owning the restaurant to getting in the ring. Like, you've got to explain that in a way that makes sense, like why the fight would happen, why Mason would fight him, and why Rocky would do it. Because he doesn't need to do it. But then, of course, they explain why he needs to do it, and it is because he needs to get it all out of his system and, like, prove again that he is someone, and he's lonely and he wants the attention or whatever. But I think they do that very well with Rocky and Balboa and Creed to sort of set up the fight. Like, they find different ways to jump through the hoop to get the has-been and the never was against the champ. I think they always do that very well. They always do that in a way that I like, that I'm satisfied with.
Yeah.
With, like you're saying with Creed, with Rocky getting the cancer diagnosis and not wanting to fight and all that, I think that whole sequence of, like, that from that thing where Rocky sort of says to Adonis, the past's back there, you're the future, I'm just going to, shuffle off. You're no one, you're not family, or all that stuff. And then Donnie's little sort of death spiral, he goes and he fights the guys at the club, and then he gets arrested, and then he tells Rocky to piss off and all that. That's fantastic, and the ending of that, where it's just like, if I fight, you fight.
I spend like almost the entirety of like Creed either crying or on the edge of tears.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful. Like, it really is just like those great moments when you're just like, oh god, that's really, it's there. I can just feel it in my heart. It's amazing.
And from what I've seen from people, I know people who have seen it and who haven't even seen any Rocky movies, and they've still felt that connection to Rocky as a character and still loved him and sympathized with him.
Yeah, I mean, even though obviously this is the only Rocky film that Stallone didn't write, they just capture the character perfectly. They get that goofy dialogue, and they get that sort of, like I was saying before, like the sort of meaningless but meaningful Rockyisms. And it always stays true to the character, and Stallone is killing it.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the scenes, some of it, like that whole speech where he says, everyone's gone, this is the past, this is the future, and so on. You're like, wow, this is really, really powerful and really good.
Yeah, he even has like little moments in it. Like I don't know why this sticks out in my mind so much, but during the speech we're talking about, he has this moment where like he has to catch himself because he's getting too emotional, and he kind of like breathes out in a heavy way, like sort of like, oh, let's recenter myself so I can continue this speech. And it's great. It's because, I mean, I've always felt like Stallone has that ability, but he just doesn't always tap into it for whatever reason.
Yeah, because, I mean, he does well in Balboa as well. There's a couple of speeches he does in that to Paulie where it's a similar sort of thing. Like, he starts to, like, get quite emotional. And he can do it. He can sell it. It doesn't feel... Like, I think he's getting better with age, because there are some scenes in, like, when Mickey dies and Rocky's, like, crying over Mickey, that's pretty poor. But I think when he goes for, like, a quiet emotional moment, he can do it.
exactly. He doesn't really have any of those in the middle films, really.
No.
I'm not. I think the middle films aren't really great for Stallone.
No.
For Rocky as a character, really, but even though the films themselves can be great, it's really Rocky, then Balboa, and Creed, which are the ones that he absolutely kills it.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I've always like with the Rocky films, there is that sense there's like a couple of trilogies in there. Like you can watch the first, second, and third one. That's pretty satisfying. Or you can go like three, four, five if you want to see how crazy the whole thing got. But watching just like Rocky Balboa, and Creed, fantastic. Just three movies with pretty much the same plot, but fantastic.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
really good films.
Yeah, it's weird how they can do that because it doesn't feel the same in either of them, even though each fight has the exact same outcome.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, I never, you never feel like it's like a cheap rehash. You always feel like it's adding something to the pile. There's never a feeling of like, oh, this is just a bit of a throwaway, whatever. They just need to redo this whole story. But no, even like Rocky Balboa being very similar to Rocky, it works as the catharsis of a better ending than Rocky Five, but also just seeing, was it 40 years later? Yeah, 2006 to 2000 to 76? No, 30 years later. Can I? Yeah, 30. And
Yeah.
just to see, and I think it is like, because there was a thing Stallone said, like, they piggybacked on another boxing match to film it and to get the crowd and the press conference and all that.
All right.
So he said, like, I think the final fight, the main event had already happened, and then they were going to go out and use their cameras and, make a deal with HBO and film it. And like before Stallone went out, his big worry was he was going to go out and the crowd were going to be dickheads and they were going to boo him or they were going to just jeer or they were going to be silent. And all he sort of said to everyone was like, "Oh, when Stallone comes out, you just need to cheer." He said, and when he came out, they all just started chanting Rocky. Like he hadn't told them to. They all just did it, and it's like, and I think that's a perfect sort of thing for, like you say, people just love the character, and to see him doing it again and doing it well and it being a good film is so satisfying and just like it's a perfect ending until Creed comes along and is an even more perfect ending.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you actually reminding me actually that specific thing reminds me of a story I read today about how I think it was like the first screening that of Rocky in '76 and people, I think, Stallone was in the screening and he didn't feel that people were responding to it well. People seemed a bit like, they weren't laughing at the right bits and they weren't responding emotionally. And then people made their way out and he just stayed there on his own thinking, all this has been for nothing. I've completely failed. And then he goes out, 10 minutes after everyone else has left, collects himself, goes out, goes down the stairs. When he gets down there, every single person who's in the screening is there waiting for him, and he'll just burst into applause.
Wow.
And I think, that is just, again, like it feels like a Rocky moment,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
It's wonderful.
That's very true. The watching Creed, like when I went to go first see it, I went to see it on the cinema by myself. I had like a day off work in the middle of the week, and I went to see it like I had to go see it early in the morning because I had bronchitis. So I was like, right, I've got to go see it at like 10 a.m. in the morning in an empty cinema in case I have a coughing fit. And when I got there, I was completely distracted by the film and didn't cough at all, which was impressive, the power of film. But the thing I didn't know about Creed was that pretty Ricky Conlon was a Scouser, was like, from Liverpool.
Oh, yes, yeah, of course.
And I'm a big Everton fan, and my family's from Liverpool and all that. So when he sort of appeared, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And I was like, "Why am I in this cinema by myself?" And he's like, nudge someone and go, "Oh my god!" And then like one of my favorite scenes in all of Creed, in all of Creed, is at the when they're in Liverpool and it shows the press conference and it's St. George's Hall, and I used to work like 2 streets down from that School of English. And when they're inside, and like me and my wife had taken a tour of it and all that, and when Tony Bello, who plays Pretty Ricky Conlon, is talking, and he's like, "You ain't got no legacy. You're a false Creed." And I was like, this is a huge Hollywood film, and that is a big big Scouse accent and they're just going for it. And I mean, I'm sure you've had the same thing in the past. Like, English people on film were Hugh Grant for a very long time. It was very plummy and very posh, and then there was that thing of like super Cockneys, and that was it. You were either a Cockney or you were super posh. But to actually see like a regional northern accent and in a massive film and have like, Apollo Creed's son in Liverpool talking to this like Scouse boxer, that just, I love it. I loved every part of that.
It's nice to see, like you say, a bit of. It's weird to call it nuance because it's just another part of the country. But I mean, like you say, it's either Ray Winston or it's Daniel Radcliffe, and
that's it.
Big Ben is in the background or something. Like there's a very limited. Basically, London is people's concept idea of England, and it's great to see that side of it. Also, I think Bellew is really great in this movie.
Oh, he's fantastic, because in real life, Tony Bellew is lovely. Like, he's just
really?
like a top bloke.
Yeah. So I couldn't tell if that was just his, persona, if he was just an angry guy in press conferences and stuff, because it was so believable. I was like, did they just say be yourself? Because I don't know what he's like.
Oh, but by all accounts, he's an absolutely lovely dude, and I think they do really well, because when you watch Rocky, you've got all of them really. They always sort of put Rocky in opposition to someone. Like, obviously, Rocky's very quiet and shy, and Apollo's very brash. Rocky's very humble. Clubber Lang is very arrogant. Rocky's American. Drago's Russian. He's old. Tommy Gunn's young, and so on and so on. So to have because Donnie's quite cocky in his own way. So the sort of way of we'll get around that by just making Conlon an absolute prick. Just an irredeemable prick. So you've got the fact that Donnie can be a bit showy, but he's always going to be outshone by this huge personality, which is Conlon. I think that's great, because he's like a boo-hiss villain, but it works.
He's scary. Yeah. He's pretty scary. There's
terrifying.
He has certain looks in a ring, where I think I can't remember the specific bit when Adonis first gets a proper hit on him and he realizes you've hurt me. He just has this look that's just terrifying. He looks like he's gonna kill him.
Well, the bit that, because obviously he's just he's just big dark eyes, just staring through people. But there's a bit where early on, he's put some punishment on Donnie, and Donnie gets one jab and hits him full in the face, and he just gives him a big smile, and you're like, oh shit, and then just starts pummeling Donnie again, like oh god, this guy's amazing. I don't know if you've seen the video, Stallone put it on his Twitter. And it's them, I think they're rehearsing, and Tony Bellew hits Michael B. Jordan and knocks him out. Just knocks him cold. They're just sort of sparring a bit. And it's obviously purely unintentional. He's gone to do a shadow punch or whatever and just overtimed it. And he just hits him, and Michael B. Jordan just ragdolls. Just on the ground, just completely put out. And oh god, this dude is the real deal. He is tough as a coffin nail. And I think he's a great character, and he also sort of gets his redeeming moment at the end as well. He goes over to Donnie and says, you're the future of this generation, this division, the lightweight division, and you've earned your name. Oh, cool. Okay, well that's nice. So Conlon gets to go to jail with a bit of, he's redeemed himself a bit.
It's
cool.
It's also the same thing that with the ending of Balboa with Mason Dixon, where they set it up basically that the split decision means that both the villain and the hero get to win. Because I guess Mason Dixon in Balboa is more sympathetic than Conlon, but both of them have their reasons for wanting to make this match work, and both of them get to win, so they're not humiliated by in Balboa being beaten by an old man, and in Creed being beaten by someone who just has barely any experience. But again, and then the loser gets respect from their peers.
Yeah, that's it. And I think they do well. Dixon breaks his hand, doesn't he? But keeps fighting. So you'd have that thing of he's got it all works together. Because he's broken his hand, then it's more likely that Rocky could beat shit out of him. But at the same time, in the aftermath of the fight, it would be oh yeah, Dixon went the distance with a broken hand against this classic fighter. Maybe we've underestimated him, and he is a better person. And also, like you say, Rocky gets to cleanse himself of the beast, which is a concept that sort of comes up towards the end of the film. Which I think they earlier on, when the people are hassling Rocky and Marie in the bar, there's like the three women and the dude.
Yeah.
And he goes over and just sort of like shoves the guy against the wall. I feel like as though they chickened out there because they should have gone over and battered him, and that be the idea of this beast. He's still got punches in him that he needs to get out. But that concept just comes up like as they're walking into the ring, and then at the end, like Paulie says to him, like, "Oh, this is it now. You got to get the beast out of you." And the fight ends, and Rocky says, "Yeah, the beast is gone now." Like this is a brand new concept. I feel like there's no lead up to that.
I think they might make an earlier reference when they say something about, "Oh, I've got stuff in the basement," which is
stuff in the basement.
They're mixing metaphors, I think, but it works enough for me. And also I think the thing about attacking that guy, I don't think Stallone ever wants Rocky to do anything that bad. Because, even in the first movie, when he's shaking down people for the money they owe to the mob, he's like, "Oh, I'm supposed to break your thumb, but just make sure you pay the money." And lets the guy go.
Yeah, promise.
He's a really, really nice criminal at the start.
That's it.
He can't do anything wrong, really.
Yeah, that's it. He's always going to be the box with it. Because there is that interesting thing of he's got a heart of gold and he's a lovely guy, but his job is to hit people until they can't get up anymore. That's what he's paid for. But he's it's interesting to have those two ideas of oh, Rocky's lovely and he'd never hurt a fly unless he was getting paid to do it on telly, and then he'd beat shit out of someone.
Yeah, well, that's partly why he's so passive with his career. I think he needs to discover that drive, the eye of the tiger, because once he gets that, he's channeling all his anger from being mistreated in his life and from not getting any kind of success, any kind of good things happening to him. There's a great scene in Balboa that's unfortunately cut from the movie, but it's just him talking to Steps, little Marie's son. And he only makes a quick reference to it. It's another one of those sort of speechy bits. But he just makes a quick reference to the fact that both his mum and dad I think his dad left when he was young, and then his mum didn't really care about him and also left at some point. He kind of makes it in an offhand way, but it really kind of sets the scene of oh wow, this guy has had nothing going for him for most of his life.
I think he says that directly to Donnie, doesn't he? It's just it's either in the final fight or in the training. He's everyone who ever insulted you, everyone who ever did this, every bad feeling, you've got to put it all into the bag, I think, and he's just punching the heavy bag. And I think that it's sort of the subtext becomes text. It is just no, all this bad feeling, this is how you're going to get it out. You're going to put it on someone else with your fists and work it out from there.
Yeah, he's because I think Rocky is pretty incapable of expressing that in a way that's gonna hurt someone unless it's in the ring. Because you mentioned it earlier, the scene between with Rocky and Mickey in the first movie where Mickey visits him in his apartment is absolutely I think after rewatching it the other day, I think it's absolutely my favorite scene of the whole series. Because I love Burgess Meredith in this series anyway, but like you said, there's this moment where Rocky explodes in anger and all his hurt, and he's saying that, it stinks, this place is awful, I live in this terrible apartment, nothing is going for me, and you were someone who told me I was a waste of space, why are you coming to me? And explodes all this frustration, and he shouts at him, but he doesn't do it to his face. He does it through a door.
Yeah.
I think he starts off saying it to himself, but then gets too angry and starts shouting through the door. Mickey leaves, goes down the street, and then, as soon as Rocky realizes he's gone, he runs out to him, and then you don't hear any dialogue, but you see him sort of console with him and presumably apologize. And it's even when he's have this moment of letting out all his frustration, he's still oh damn it, a bystander was hurt by my emotion, I need to apologize. And again in Creed there's a bit when he first he collapses when he's training Adonis before he goes to the hospital, as Adonis is like carrying him out of the ring to go to hospital, he keeps apologizing,
Yeah,
for like putting him through the trouble, because he's someone who just constantly gives and doesn't expect anything in return.
yeah, that's it. Like he's being carried, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Like, no, dude, you chill. You've just puked and fallen over. This isn't on you anymore.
Yeah,
Like, and even he's trying to get out of the hospital bed. He's like, "Oh, I won't," Okay, well that's fine. I don't want to take up a bed. Like, no, just chill, man. Just it's done. That scene with him and Mickey. One thing I absolutely love about that is like you've got this idea that Rocky is this like big lummox, but as soon as Mickey comes in, you can see on his face he's got Mickey's number straight away. He knows exactly why Mickey's there. He's not going to give him the time. And there's a great line of dialogue where Mickey's like, you got heart, kid. And Rocky's like, oh yeah, I've got heart, but I don't have a locker. And he just like, and then Mickey just looks all ashamed. It's like, oh yeah, now you were happy to skid row him 2 minutes ago, but now he's going to be a big shot. You come crawling back. And I think that, like you say, it's a great scene, and it's a great scene that gets everything and increases Rocky's character in the sense of he gets that big cathartic shout, but he doesn't shout in Mickey's face, and he doesn't threaten him. And then in the end, the scene ends with him, like you say, apologizing or consoling, and then the next minute, right, let's get training, and that's it. And it does everything in a very small space, but keeps the plot moving forward. Because you don't need him and Mickey to be at odds with each other for another 15 minutes. Wrap it up, but get all the good stuff as well.
Yeah, the way the framing in the first one, the direction is amazing, because you've got that whole argument. You've got they start off together, in one room, but then Rocky, leaves the room. He shuts the door. He talks to him through the door, and then there's a point when Mickey opens the door, realizes he's left his hat, so goes back for it, but Rocky's comes in because he thinks he's left, and there's all this. The way they're moving is interesting, but you also get moments of them talking together, but you also see Rocky on his own, letting out his frustration, and you get to see, Mickey walking around this room, on his own, looking like completely crestfallen. And that's the first moment with Mickey because before then he's kind of a guy just like, giving Rocky shit.
He's just like
he's
like a pantomime antagonist.
Yeah.
In the background.
But then at that moment, he really humanizes him just in Burgess Meredith's face. Like he just walks around the room, grabs his hat, and goes, just to presumably go back home to where he lives alone, and think about all the years he's wasted. And
that's it.
You learn so much about those characters just through the way that scene's shot.
Like you were saying earlier, nothing wasted in the film. Like it's a 2-hour plus film, but if you said, okay, what would you take out? I couldn't think of a single scene. Like everything piles onto each other. Even like, because when I had in my notes, like, why is Gazzo the gangster? Why is his driver such a dick? But it adds to the idea that no one respects Rocky, and even though he's got this job, because Gazzo's a great character. I think there's a great scene where Gazzo gives him $500 to train, and I was thinking to myself, oh, is that going to come back round? And it doesn't. It doesn't make him throw the fight. It doesn't make him cheat or anything. It's like, no, Gazzo's a member of the community. You're this big hope for the future. Here's, $500. Go fill your boots, mate.
Yeah, that speaks to the positivity of the movie, because for a movie in the 70s as well, you see that's a real, Chekhov's gun. That's going to come back and be conflict later in the movie. But it doesn't. He's just he's a gangster, but he's just a really nice gangster.
That's it. And he gives Rocky some money to take Adrian out. He likes the kid. Whatever. It is what it is. And I think that's cool. Like you say, that sort of positivity, because even like you say, Apollo, the villain of the film, never comes across villainous. He never does anything untoward. He's only the villain because he's not Rocky. That's it. Like Apollo Creed is such a likable character, and he is the sort of backbone of these films in a way, because when he's not in the movies, they sort of aren't as good. I mean, okay, except for like Balboa, but like Creed sort of creates this idea that Apollo could have been the main character of these films, and this is like the culmination of Creed's story. which I think is great. Like, I don't know, I wasn't expecting much from Creed, and I definitely wasn't expecting it to become like one of my favorite films. Like, it is fantastic.
Yeah, I wasn't. I had high hopes, and especially since I saw it. Like, I don't know when it came out with you guys, but I know US got it, I think like November or something.
Yeah, we got it around like December, I think.
Yeah, around then. But like you guys had that out, and we did the Rocky week at audiences everywhere and everything, and then I had to wait like another 3 months before I saw Creed.
Of course, yeah.
So I knew it was getting positive things said about it, but I was still worried about how good it would be. What I never dreamt would happen is that it would be number two for me. After the first Rocky.
Yeah.
And I watched it.
Same.
I watched it with a friend today because we've been going through all these movies. I introduced him to all of them, and I asked him how he rated them all after we watched Creed today, and he rated Creed as first. Which is great.
I could find myself. I mean, I was just watching it, and it was interesting because obviously watching in the cinema, you're in it. But to watch it last night and take notes and like break down scenes, some of the cinematography in this film is just insane. Like, there is about 4 or 5 of these long unbroken shots, like just steady cams just following people, and they're so good that it takes you about 5 minutes of the scene before you realize it's happened. Like, there's the one obviously where they have the whole fight just steady cammed in one unbroken shot, and it's incredible. Like, it's showy, but it's not showy. But just amazing, just fantastic film.
Yeah, I mean, I think long shots a lot of the time will get used in films in a surface way. They're artistic and it's a bit show offy, and this is not one of those things because it really involves you. In that the one where they do the whole fight, I forgot the name of the fighter, but they I think it's the second.
Spider?
It's I can't remember, but
it doesn't matter.
But they actually weave in and out of the fighters, and it's very close, and you feel like you're in the ring with them, and it makes that long shot feel worth it because you feel like you've gone through the whole fight with them.
Yeah, and some of the choreography of that, because at one point, because I was watching, I was like, oh, this is cool, and like you say, you're like, oh, it's almost like you're the ref, just sort of like weaving out and just keeping an eye on everything. And then there's like a scene where Donnie falls on the ropes, and the camera just finds Bianca in the crowd as she shouts something, and she's just like between the ropes and between his arm, just completely framed, and she just shouts like, "Come on!" And then and then you're off the ropes again, and you're back in the fight. Like, oh god, that is just gorgeous to watch. Like, it's so frenetic and just like you say, you're right there. And then other times it's like, I think when they first come out at Goodison, the camera just follows them from the changing room all the way through and all the way. And it builds up that sort of, shit, this is going to be a big thing, and what's Conlon going to do, and what's Donnie going to do, and it doesn't draw attention to itself and say, look at me. It's to enhance the story.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Fruitvale Station.
I haven't. I don't know. I just feel like it's just going to be really grim, and I'm going to end up feeling awful about myself.
Well, I had that feeling as well. It kept me away from it for a while, but it's not. There's a lot more positivity in it than you'd think. But anyway, yeah. I mean, through both that film and this, I can tell that as a writer and a director, Ryan Coogler is just, whenever he does any film in the next, 20 years, I'm going to be so excited about it because these two movies are incredible. They're some of the best movies of that I've ever seen. And and this guy's doing Black Panther. That's just amazing. Oh god.
And that cast as well.
Oh yeah, Michael B. Jordan is in it, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's going to be one of the baddies.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Well, the thing as well, which is very interesting with Creed in comparison to say Rocky or Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa. The Rocky films are very white. They're very mainstream, very white. But then I just love the fact that Creed is it's just unashamedly black. It's just African American all the way. Like all the characters, all the dialogue, the the music. It's such an interesting thing to take something that's been like this big sort of hero in like the white community, which sounds racist to say white community, but not like the far right community. But like, and I don't know. It's just it's like I was saying before about the Force Awakens thing. It takes something that exists, takes the composite parts of it, and then just just takes it on a completely different tangent and makes something fantastic. Like it's a good remix. And I could spend another hour just talking about Creed.
It is wonderful.
So
it is wonderful, and like Force Awakens, the best thing for me, well, not the best thing, but one of the best things is that this is a story that can continue now, and now it doesn't have to be about Rocky. It can just be about Adonis, and it can be about those characters. And I'm thinking, I want to see Creed 2 because I want to see more Bianca. I want to see more of Adonis's mum. And I want to see more of him, of course.
I want to see more of his Stitch and his crew. Like I think they're great little side characters. Like his like corner men.
Oh
There's a running thing, when he's got like the old dude with the toothpick in his mouth and he's holding the pads.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he has to hit them all. And then when he just gets into the rhythm and he's doing it really, again, and it's an unbroken shot that just like goes around. And it's just that noise, that, and it's just, that for me, like when that started happening last night, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how much I love that sequence of just, so much good stuff, and so many cool little scenes, and there's so much organic stuff as well. Like when they go and get like the Philly cheesesteaks, that feels like they've just gone into a real Philly cheesesteak restaurant and just filmed how the people interact, and it's like brilliant. The guys on the motorbikes in the street and like the dune buggies, and that scene where Donnie's running and he gets them all to come and rev the bikes to get Rocky out and all that. I mean, you could say every scene from the beginning to the end. Like, there's so much good stuff. Like when Donnie fights, he goes to the gym, the Delphi gym in California, and he like batters that dude, and then he's like, yeah, who's next? And Stuntman Wheeler comes up and just schools him, just without effort, just puts him on his ass. And it's like, okay, awesome. So now we know who Donnie is. We've got that idea of his character now. He thinks he's this. This is what he actually is. Now he needs to become the next level of that. And it's filmed gorgeously, and it's funny, and it's brutal. Oh, no, love it.
Yeah, I think, Creed is up there. It's really up there. I think it's because it's going to be on my best of year list. Because my best of year list is always slightly different from everyone else's because I'm in the UK. So all the Oscar movies and stuff will come out in February or March here. Well, they were topping people's lists last year, but so far this has got to be number one of my year, and I don't expect anything else to shift it from it. Really. Well,
like you say, speaking to people who have watched the film independent of Rocky and still rate it incredibly highly is an achievement by itself. Like you couldn't give someone, I don't think you could give someone Rocky Balboa and say, watch this by itself, what do you think? I think you'd always feel like there were pieces missing. Whereas Creed, you can fill in the blanks and work it out, and it's good enough that, because it's not Rocky's story with Creed in it. It's Creed's story, and Rocky just happens to be a part of it. I think they do that very well to sort of flesh out Creed's story, flesh out Bianca's story. Like, her whole story could be its own movie, and she's the main character, and she just happens to be involved with this boxer. That could be a movie by itself.
Yeah,
I'd happily watch that.
She's extremely, that's why I wanted more of her, because she was in it quite a lot early on, and then she gets sidelined slightly towards the end. But, I don't know. But again, they needed to focus on Rocky, so I don't really hate them for it. But, she was so good, and she has so many great moments in it. I think I love the moment where she takes it, her hearing aid out when she's having the argument with him. She's just, there's so many wonderful moments between them. It feels so genuine. In the same way that it did with Rocky and Adrian in the first movie.
Yeah, and again, that sort of idea of, like I was saying, so Rocky and Adrian are quite passive characters. So they flip that on its head, and Donnie and Bianca are very, they're very aggressive, they're very active characters, and how that works, and how they put those two ideas together, and how they fill each other's gaps, I guess. And yeah, I think it just works really well because she's not a love interest character by any stretch of the imagination. She's a character who just happens to, meet Adonis Creed and fall in love with him, and I think that works really well. And it's a testament to the fact that this film, like this genre of films, they can just sort of, those, like, the female characters can be just pushed to sort of a supporting role where their agency is taken away from them, and their only sort of plot device is the husband's plot.
Yeah,
which sort of does happen to Adrian.
Or they could, I'm not naming any names, but they could just be killed off in the first 20 minutes as well. Yeah. But yeah, she's wonderful, and she's also, I mean, she's fun to watch, but she's thematically relevant to the movie, which is important. Again, it's that thing with the first Rocky. There's not anything you want to take out of the movie because it all fits together as this, as one piece.
Yeah, perfectly, and also it's interesting as well because it's all there. Like the plot's there, the dialogue's there, the story's there, the characters are there. But also when you get to that final fight, it's incredibly exciting. You're back in that same feeling you had watching Rocky versus Apollo in '76. You are on the edge of your seat, punch by punch, step by step, round by round, just like. And all the corner interactions are great. Like, I love the fact that, when his eye closes and the guy's tapping on his neck to tell him how many fingers, like, that's a great little touch. And also just having that catharsis of Donnie saying to him, like, I've got to prove I'm not a mistake. And then Stallone and Rocky saying to him, like, you've taught me to fight, this. I love your kid. Go out there and shut him up, And it's beautiful. Like, you've got full tears at that point. Like, I had, like, full tears, and I'm like, Donnie, go and just knock him out, mate. Just like completely just in puddles.
There's another moment in that fight that's the most powerful moment for me, is when he gets absolutely knocked to the floor. He looks completely out for the count, and he just gets random flashes of mostly things from the movie, which could be really corny, but like they're sparse enough. They're just edited in such a perfect way, and then you get that one just quiet shot of Apollo, and then like a half second wait, and then bam, he's up like a man possessed, and it's
that's it, just straight on his feet.
I remember I was properly on the edge of my seat at that moment. For real.
Yeah, that's it. And like Conlon's on the corner, isn't he? Like getting the crowd cheering, and then just Donnie's just on his feet, and it's like, oh shit, this is on again. It's so much fun to watch. Like I was watching this in the living room, and my wife's she's studying for a master's, so she's in the back room studying, and she's saying, like, while she's doing her work, all she can hear is, oh fuck, get him, jump, getting right into it, just like pouring with sweat. It's like, no, toe to toe. I love it. It's just, there's so much fun, these movies, so much fun to watch, because they're always going to build up to some great action sequence that's going to be really lavish and personal and great. Yeah, they're fantastic.
It's utterly absurd, this series. Because normally when I talk about film, I always end up trying to talk in terms of other films, like, oh, this is the blank of the Rocky series or whatever. But because it's often easier to talk in that way. But there's Creed. There's no the only comparison points I can think of to Creed, or something that fits into the franchise in the same way, is something like Terminator Genesis or Jurassic World, which are not in the same league exactly, but because it has so much on its shoulders. It's a sequel to many movies, and it's like a reboot in a way. It's a new beginning, but it's a standalone film that doesn't need a sequel and doesn't need anything before it. Like, it works on so many levels that I'm just kind of, I'm astounded that this got made, and especially since as well is, however much respect I have for Ryan Coogler, the idea of Rocky being a character held by Stallone and being written by him for 6 movies and then being handed off. There is a fear in that of like, oh, what if he doesn't get it right?
Yeah.
Because Stallone he's had his up and downs with the series, but like for the most part, he remains true to these characters.
Yeah, and also as well, like, to give it to a director with only like one movie and who doesn't really have like action chops, and when it was first announced, I only knew about it because I think my mum told me about it. She was like, "Oh, they're filming a Rocky film in Goodison Park." Like, she phoned me about it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And I looked, and it was like, "Oh, it's a spin-off about Apollo Creed's son." And I was actually like, "Ugh, snooze, not into it." And even like, I didn't bother. I don't think I watched a trailer for it. And it was only on Twitter, like Diego and Dave Shreve and all them were going wild for it. And I was like, oh, okay, I better give this a bit of a look. So I watched a trailer, and as soon as I watched the first trailer, I was like, oh, shit, I need to be seeing this now. And straight away, as soon as it came out, went to the cinema at 10 a.m. in the morning and watched it and was just blown away. Like, in terms of, like, a comparison, like you say, you can't, like, Force Awakens will take you so far, but like you say, Force Awakens is very much the middle film. It's the first film of like a new trilogy, and it's a follow-up to something else. Whereas, like, if there were no more Creed films, fine. You don't need it to finish it. I want like 20 more of them, but like, you're not landing on a cliffhanger. It's not like, oh, but there's this unresolved plot line. It is what it is. Like, I don't think there is any films like that.
Especially for a drama, because I mean, you have these serialized things now, like the Marvel movies and now the DC expanded universe, and we have those, but I mean, they're happening because they're big budget, explosive things that make a ton of money, even if they're not that great. So the idea of this happening, we're on the 7th film telling the story of a boxer, and it seems bizarre that this would ever happen.
Yeah.
Imagine
very much so. I mean,
imagine predicting this in 1976.
Yeah, I mean, because even like, I was laughing about that. I was writing in my notes when Apollo says to him at the end, "Yeah, there isn't going to be no rematch." Like, yeah, there is. Mate. There's going to be many rematches. This story is not over. I think what I could compare it to. The closest thing I could get would be Casino Royale.
Oh, right, yeah.
Daniel Craig. That's about as close as I can get, and even then, there's 20 Bond films before that. So it's not like there's no surprise that they made more Bond films. Whereas I think Creed just comes out of nowhere. It's just sort of like, yeah, the Rocky story. Okay, talk about it from first to last. Rocky to Rocky Balboa is definitely from first to last, and that is a closed circle, and it's done. And that's why I think obviously 10 years later, this film appearing and opening the circle again and saying no, this is the last one, is so absurd and so ridiculous, and yet every single part of it works. That's unpredictable. That's insane.
Yeah, I feel. Because you get so used to reboots being just an automatic write-off, because you're like, oh, they're doing Total Recall again, great, and then it's terrible, or at best it's okay, and whether you've seen it or not, you just forget about it. So the idea of something being good is kind of amazing, and then the fact that it's actually brilliant is baffling. I said earlier, I keep thinking that I'm gonna like wake up tomorrow, and I've dreamt that this movie exists, because it doesn't feel like it's like having a dream about Christmas. And you wake up the next day and you're like, oh man, didn't actually happen. When you're a kid.
Shit, it's June.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I keep every now and again I just think about it. I'm like, wow. Like, especially with Ryan Coogler as well, it's like someone like made a movie for me in particular.
Yeah,
like it's so strange.
Well, I mean, it's almost like it's like Stallone's dream. It's like the idea of like, oh, someone will come in and they'll write the script so I don't have to do it. They'll direct it so I don't have to do it. I'll star in it and I'll get nominated for an Oscar and I'll win a Golden Globe. Like, yeah, whatever. Sit down, Stallone. What's this guy talking about?
Yeah.
And it's kickstarted because Michael B. Jordan was a rising star, and then there was Fantastic Four, and it was like, oh shit, is this going to hang around his neck? And then obviously 6 months later, Creed. Oh no, now he's going to be the biggest thing in the world. Brilliant. Thank Christ.
Yeah, I think that the buzz around Fantastic 4 was so bad. Like I watch every single superhero movie really because I just can't help myself being a nerd. But that was one I just had so little interest in it that I just didn't even make it out for it in the cinema.
No,
and I still haven't seen it.
I've never seen it. Same. I watched one trailer for it, and I watched all the trailers for it, and I was like, every one of these trailers has been in the same location.
Yes, a load of warehouse corridors, I think.
Yeah, just like a big room, and then a warehouse corridor, and then like a CGI planet. It's like, oh no, this is a shame, because there's some talent here, and that's a shame. Anything else you'd like to add about any of these 3 movies, or any of these 7 movies? After all, this is the movie special. Like, is there anything particularly in this movie? I'm trying to think. Like, for me, these movies, when we say about like the cliche and the Rocky idea, I think the Rocky idea is the montage. I think these movies perfected and created the montage.
Yeah.
And I think they continue that. I think even like, because Creed could have happily just dropped that idea and been like, that's a little bit too Rocky. But instead, they do quite a few of them, and they're amazing.
Yeah, it's really great, and there's a few, like you're saying about the motorbike thing. On paper, that sounds like a bit, for an otherwise fairly grounded movie, it seems a bit almost silly, a bit weird.
Yeah.
But like they set it up in enough that in the moment it feels like heroic, and like, because part of the movie is Adonis isn't accepted to be a fighter because being a fighter, it's meant to be rags to riches, and
you're fighting for your life.
Yeah, and he doesn't have the need for it. So, and then he moves to Philadelphia where he's, an outsider there, and then for him to have that run through Philadelphia with these people, actually on the streets with him, is kind of like an acceptance that works extremely well.
Yeah, that's it. That's his like triumph. That's his guard of honor. And it's just a I mean okay, well, not to restart the Creed conversation, but like one thing, like every piece of it that I love, and then there's like at the end when they're showing the fight, and his mom, like Marianne's watching the fight, and she's been kind of like very disapproving, but then she sends him the shorts, and then I love the thing of like her in this mansion, glass of wine, and she is like, come on baby, she gets into it there, and you're like, oh, okay, well, if he's gonna fight, you're on his side, like, and she, for all her sort of like, oh, you're gonna box your brains out and all that, but when he's in the ring, he's got to knock this guy the fuck out. That's it. If he's gonna fight, he's gonna win. And I love that idea.
Yeah, it is wonderful. I have one last thing that I want to say. This is just trivia, but I love it. I don't know if you ever heard about the audition that Carl Weathers had to be Apollo Creed. He was reading his lines with Stallone and the director, and then halfway through he kind of cuts Stallone off and says, Mr. Arvidsson, like, I could do much better if you have a real actor reading with me. And then the director goes, well, Carl, that's Rocky, that's the star, that's the guy who wrote the script. And then Carl Weathers bursts out laughing and goes, well, maybe he'll get better. And
that's pure Creed.
Yeah, and that's exactly the moment where Stallone says, okay, that's Apollo Creed, that's exactly what I want, and hires him there.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, because Creed's a fantastic character, and he adds the extra little bit of fun that Rocky can't have, if you know what I mean. Like, the character of Rocky can't be that big. Like, he has to be the small, quiet moments. But Creed can come into the ring on a boat, dressed like George Washington, get off the boat, take off the George Washington costume, put on an Uncle Sam costume, dance around the ring going, I want you! And like, Stallone can't do that. Stallone can just comment from afar. But you've got all those big moments. You can give them all to Carl Weathers, who is loving it.
Yeah,
every second of it.
He's wonderful. He's I mean, I keep on wanting to say, every time we talk about a character, I keep wanting to say, oh, they're the heart of the franchise, and I want to say that about everyone, really. I mean, even it's you're never going to say Paulie's the heart of the franchise, but I still love him, and I love his presence in all of them. He
definitely adds something.
Yeah, everyone here is, especially in the first movie, everyone brings that A game.
Yeah, no, very much so. I think it's interesting, like as the movies go on, how much they sort of they recruit non-actors to play roles. Like all the boxers after a while are real boxers, which I think is a good little money-saving thing as well. Because then, when they want to show like how good a boxer they are, they can just show their fights. You know, it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, this is Pretty Ricky Conlan, and then they just show three of his incredible real-life knockouts. And like, oh, okay, so that's the character. And even like Rocky Balboa, the sort of like skeevy promoter who works for Mason Dixon is a real life boxing promoter.
Oh,
He
really?
just plays is a version of himself. Like that. That's not a very sympathetic portrayal of your industry.
Yeah, that guy was really convincing at being sleazy.
Yeah, so he's just playing himself. And obviously Mason Dixon's a boxer in real life, and then so was Spider Rico apparently. So I guess it was always there. It was always a trend.
I love that Spider Rico comes back in Balboa just to
Yeah.
wash dishes.
And just like pray with him and all that, and just be there. And like that was cool because that wasn't really a character trait that I picked up on in his 2 minutes of screen time in Rocky.
Yeah, you get the feeling with that kind of thing that no one knows these characters or loves them more than Stallone, so he brings this stuff back in.
Yeah.
And it's clearly Coogler's a huge fan because he has that same love for these characters and to know the details to bring back in.
Yeah, like Creed feels more like because Rocky Balboa feels like a sequel to Rocky. Just Rocky. Whereas Creed feels like it follows straight on from 4. It's got a lot of like they talk a lot about Rocky 3. It's a lot about after Mickey died, this happened, and it's more of a history rather than like Rocky Balboa is a little bit more surgical. It kind of picks out the good bits and misses out a few of the other bits. Like it doesn't really mention 5. It doesn't really talk about 4. It's more sort of like back to street level Rocky 1. Whereas Creed is quite happy to be like, oh yeah, my the main character's father was killed by a steroided up Russian Superman in the ring. And that's going to be a major plot point in this film. And then they just do it and they sell it. Like I haven't watched 4 since watching Creed, but I'd be intrigued to see if it was a very different experience.
Yeah, I tell you what, I watched 4 before I saw Creed. I saw Creed. I watched 4 again in my rewatch after I saw Creed. And I don't know how much of an effect Creed on it, but I went from absolutely hating 4 completely to thinking it was pretty good. And there's stuff in there I like. So I think pretty much all the movies in this series I end up liking a little bit more each time.
Yeah. Well, they're all just like compulsively watchable.
Yeah.
Like they're such wild characters and such crazy situations, and like you say, I mean, to sort of if we did a conclusion for this, it would say that the heart or the main sort of thing that draws you back each time is the character of Rocky. He is a compulsively watchable character, and he's just a lot of fun because I don't know how you define it. Like, I guess we have defined it in this podcast. Like he's a big lovable oaf who just does the right thing, and all he needs to do is he doesn't need to win. He just needs to prove to the world that he is, and he does that, and that's really satisfying to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he's it proves that characters don't have to be intricate to be relatable or to be powerful. They can because Rocky's a straightforward character for the most part, and he's a simple character. He's probably, in terms of like popular well-known characters, he's probably the dumbest, which but like which is easy to forget because the joke is rarely that he's dumb. There's occasional gags about it, but like he's everyone. That you can tell that Stallone is he's writing it. He knows this guy's dumb, and we know he's dumb. But it doesn't make him less of a person or make him a gag, or make him irritating or anything. It's just, he's a guy. He's not too smart.
That's it. And he's never the punchline. It is like he is. They do well because, like, again, to go back to the whole Robert Redford thing, you couldn't believe that Robert Redford lived in that shitty apartment and grew up on the streets of Philly. Whereas you watch that film, and Stallone looks like he's just some bum who lives around the corner. And he sounds like that, and he talks like that. He doesn't talk like a very educated man. He doesn't talk like a very worldly man, but he's just lovable.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah, he's just a good man, and the reason the performance is powerful is because it's a character that, while not exactly like Stallone himself, is, was written by him.
Mm-hmm.
It came from a feeling. It came from a feeling at the time of he was getting nowhere with his career, and he felt like he'd wasted his life, and he felt like he was, on the edge of a precipice, and he's writes his character at that moment and stars at him, and he puts his all into it, and it's kind of a miracle. It's a lightning in a bottle situation that I can't. No other actor could have done it.
Yeah, no, very much so. Last thing I'm going to say, one thing I do love, and one thing that I feel like just breaks the cliche just slightly, when Robert gives him the big speech in Rocky Balboa about like, living in your shadow and this. I love the fact that, I remember when I first watched this film and I was waiting for Rocky to give the speech back, and I was waiting for the speech to be more comforting and reassuring, but I love the fact that the speech is just like, no, stop being such a big baby and just get your own and just fight and just do it. And I just love the fact that it's like, it's not like, oh no, but you're the best thing that ever happened to me and you're a miracle and this. It's like, no, fuck that. Stop being, this and get what you want. And I think that's just a great speech and just a great flip of the usual cliche. Like, he's not comforting him. He's just saying to him, you know what? It's not my fault that you can't piece it together. Get your head in the game and see what you can do. And I love that.
I think the big running theme that goes through all these movies, particularly the ones we're talking about today with Rocky Balboa and Creed, is about your expectations of yourself and people's expectations of you. Because, that's in that argument with his son, because his son's saying, I'm living in your shadow, everyone thinks of me as your kid, and he say, go out and create the person that you're supposed to be, then you're letting yourself live in that shadow. And then in the first one, he's a bum, he's on the street, he's getting by however he can, and then he goes, no, I want to be somebody. And then Creed, he can get by with money, but he doesn't want, he wants to live outside of his father's shadow, but he wants to do that while still being a Creed. He wants to live up to his father's legends, but he wants to be separate from it. He doesn't want someone to say to him, you're better than your father or you're worse than him. I'm my own man.
Yeah, he's not baby Creed.
No, it's not baby Creed. Don't say that to him.
don't tell him I'm going to call baby Creed. Okay, Jack, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me, like Sean, you can find me on audienceseverywhere.net. I also have a WordPress blog, that's jackalexandergodwin.wordpress.com.
Fantastic. As usual, if you want a guest on this podcast, come find me on Twitter, first to last pod, or email me directly at fromfirsttolastpodcast@gmail.com. I also can be found at audienceeverywhere.net. If you are a fan of Rocky, definitely track down. Audience Everywhere did a Rocky week. It would have been, I guess, last November. And there's some absolutely fantastic articles in there. There's Rocky's best quotes. I think there's a review of every movie. There's I wrote a few things. Did you put anything in that, Jack?
Yeah, I if you want to find out why I don't like Rocky 4 and why I love Rocky 5, I wrote an article about each of those movies.
There you go, perfect. And I'll link that in the link to this podcast. And so Jack, thanks for coming on. I think we went the distance.
Yeah, we definitely did. Thanks for having me.
Of course, mate. One step, one punch, one round at a time. My name is Sean Fallon. This has been From First to Last. Goodbye.